Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Talking Cardboard. On tonight's episode, we're doing a little bit of something different. It's a brand new segment called Quick Roll, where we go over, at least on this segment, I go over the games that I played over this last week, around 7 to 10 days. I go over all the games I've played, whether it be with my wife or with the Talking Cardboard crew or with other gamers or other friends or family, and I discuss each one that I played and how I liked it. So we'll get right into it with the first game. So the first game I'd like to talk about is Betrayal Legacy, which is a follow-up to the much beloved, much popular game Betrayal at House on the Hill. It is a follow-up in the sense that it's not a direct sequel. I'm not going to get into any spoilers with this, but it is a legacy game. So the game changes, the game builds off of itself as you play. So the further on you get into it, the more the story builds. Starting with the pros, this is typically not a game that I would necessarily enjoy, or one that I would think to enjoy right off of its surface or after reading the back of the box to kind of see what type of game it is. I've played Betrayal House on the Hill plenty of times. Really not my style of game, but I was pleasantly surprised with Betrayal Legacy for the most part. It had great storytelling, had great character development. It really wrapped up. I thought the conclusion to the campaign was one of the best conclusions that I've had in a board game playing experience ever. So I thought that definitely had a plus side to it. But for those more thematic style gamers out there, I think you're really going to enjoy this. I could see a lot of people rating this an 8, a 9, maybe even a 10 out of 10 if you are into those thematic style games. For me, being more of a heavy Euro style gamer, more on the strategy style gaming side, it wasn't as much of a hit for me. I would say, I mean, we haven't gotten into our full review yet with the entire crew, so I'm not going to say my exact rating at this time, but I will say, having played through the entire campaign, that it did build for me. It got better and better and better and built on itself as we played. I did not enjoy it very much in the beginning. I enjoyed it a little bit more in the middle, and as we went to the end of it, the final conclusion was a lot of fun and some great storytelling. A lot of the cons for the game, more of for myself, not for most others who enjoy the thematic, more American style theme games, would be that it just feels like you're going through the house, discovering new tiles. The tiles become more repetitive as you see them throughout each new game experience or gameplay. As you revisit the game, when you sit down for the next play of it, you will see a lot of the same tiles as you go. You do discover new tiles throughout the game, otherwise it wouldn't be a legacy style game. You do discover brand new tiles, but those get shuffled into the mix and you basically see the same thing over and over again. The story does develop nicely. As I said, the story aspect of the game is very strong. It develops very nicely. The character development is awesome, and I really don't want to get into too many spoilers. Something I would like to say is that the character development is very important in the game, which was a lot of fun, and that the conclusion to the entire campaign was well worth it. I don't have a final rating at this point, or one that I'd like to give at this point, but all I would like to say is that if you are into the more thematic style games, you are thoroughly going to enjoy this game. If you're into the more Euro strategy style games, this could be more hit or miss for you. It definitely was more of a miss for me in the beginning, but like I said, it developed over time, and that is Betrayal Legacy. Another game I played this week is Blood Rage. Not a whole lot else I can say about Blood Rage. I've already rated it on my top 50 games of all time. Definitely falls in my top 10 favorite games. Spoiler if you haven't seen that video yet, I believe it came in at my number 3 favorite game of all time. But Blood Rage, there's not a whole lot else to say. I play it a lot, play it often. We play it almost every other time we get it, or we get to the table with our group of friends, with the Talking Cardboard crew. We typically get it to the table, I would say, at least once or twice a month. Having said that, that is a sign of a great game for me. A lot of card drafting in the game, drafting different monsters and attack cards in combat, and it's definitely area control. It's got some area control aspects, but me being a more strategy style board gamer and not so keen on the theme style board games, this one still shines through. It definitely has the Euro game, strategy game style aspects to it, along with the thematic dudes on a map style game. So like I said, a lot of area control, combat, stat upgrades, and the mechanism that really sings in this game is the card drafting. If you love card drafting and passing those cards around and seeing what you're going to get and using those cards that you had personally drafted to your benefit, if that is something that excites you, just that mechanism alone, Blood Rage is definitely one to give a try. If you haven't tried it yet, you're almost doing yourself a major disservice by not. One of Eric M. Lang's best games he's ever designed, in my opinion, and one to give a shot, that is Blood Rage. And the third game I got to the table this past week is a Euro style game, actually a strategy heavy Euro style game where you don't get a whole lot of points. I typically love games where you get a ton of points, more of the point salad style games where you just get points for everything and you feel so good doing your actions. You feel great getting points here and points there and points everywhere. This game is not. It's very tight on money, very tight on points, and very low scoring. That's typically something I don't necessarily love to death in a game, but in this one it really sings. That game is Heaven and Ale. So Heaven and Ale, definitely not a new one that I've got to the table this past week. It's one that has hit the table many times for me, especially many times for my wife and I. We play this game more often than not as a two-player game, and we both really thoroughly enjoy it. Like I said, very tight on money, very tight in punishing with your decisions. It's a rondel style game where you're just taking your meeple and going around the board and drafting different tiles to place on your own player board. And how you place it, depending on where you place it, you can place it on the shade style of the, or shade side of the board, and that'll generate money for you in the future as you trigger those tiles. Or you can place the tile on the sunny side of the board, which when those tiles are triggered in the future, those will get you more beer ingredients. And the better you do at managing both your money and your resources for the beer, those tighten up at the end of the game and get you a multiplier for your lowest scoring brew ingredient. So your lowest scoring beer ingredient is actually what you multiply that score from to get your final score. So it's very hard to inch up all your ingredients at once to eventually get your last one up as far as you can. Very, very tight. I've seen this game end within the single digits of points. A winner might have won 7-5 or 13-11. Very tight scoring. I've seen it go up into the 20s, 30s, 40s on the higher player counts with the Talking Cardboard crew. When we've played with a full complement of 4 players, we've gotten the scores up into the 40s or 50s, but that's still very tight and very hard to do, and a very thinky game. Very simple on the surface, but very thinky at that. If that sounds interesting to you, definitely give it a shot. It's a game that got some love, kind of a flash in the pan. It got some love right away when it first came out, but I haven't heard about it being talked about a ton lately, and I hope that's not reminiscent of it falling off of people's radar, because it definitely shouldn't. If you haven't given it a shot and you love strategy, very tight, punishing strategy games, give it a try, and I don't think you'll be disappointed. That is Heaven and Ale. And the last game on my list that I've played over this past week is actually a new game that I've gotten to the table, and one that I've exclusively gotten to the table with only my wife and I. So I've only played it 2-player. That's all I've got for my opinion to be based on at this moment. But that game is one of the newest games by designer Stefan Feld, one of my all-time favorite designers. If you've watched other videos in this channel or my top 50 favorite games of all time, you'll see many of Stefan Feld's games on that list. And this is his newest, or one of his newest ones, and that is Carpe Diem. So in Carpe Diem, you've got one guy that you're doing an action with, and it's also a tile placement game. Just like in the previous game, Heaven and Ale, but a little bit different. So in this game, you've got these different piles or these different banks of tiles where you are sending your worker off to, and it's almost like in the star diagram where you can send your worker. You have to follow along the path as you go to collect tiles, and once you leave a spot to go get a tile in a different zone, that zone will have 2 different options for 2 other zones. And as you skip over to take a tile in that zone to place on your board, then you're given 2 other zone options to take tiles from. So you've got these different zones of 4 tiles on each zone, and as you take them and as you jump to different zones, you are given two other zones that you didn't previously have access to from that zone before. Kind of hard to explain, but it's a tight game in the aspect of future planning. In this game, you really have to plan for the future. You have to look ahead. You have to see what tiles are on the zone you're about to take from, and what tiles will become available from the 2 other zones that branch off of the zone you just took the tile from. So you're bouncing around to these different areas to take the tiles from to place on your board. As the tiles get completed, you're creating these fenced in areas, whether it be a body of water that'll collect you fish if you connect those tiles and make a lake or a smaller pond body of water. There's other tiles that can connect to create a chicken coop, and that'll get you chickens. And depending on how you're getting the resources and how well you're managing the tiles to get you those resources, you can trade those in with for points at the end of each round. So very simple. Again, one of the great things that Stefan Feld does very often is very simple mechanisms on the surface that develop into hardcore strategic planning throughout the game, and that is why I love Carpe Diem. I'm not going to give my overall ratings on any of these games that I've played this past week, unless I've already said it in another video. I'm going to save that for the overall full review from the Talking Cardboard crew for those games. But as of right now, that just kind of gives you an overall idea of the different style of games I've played over this past 7 to 10 days, and what I've liked about them, what maybe I haven't liked about them, and hopefully that'll pique some interest in some of these games for you if you haven't tried them, to get them to the table at your own house or at your own game group or your own friendly local game store, and get playing these different games and trying them out for yourself and seeing what you like about them or what you don't like about them, and really sparking up that conversation. Speaking of conversation, I really like to hear from you guys on your opinions on these games. If you've played them before, or if you haven't played them before, definitely let me know in the comments below, and we'll have a conversation back and forth. That is why we created this channel, is to really develop into more conversations about games and the hobby that we love and enjoy. So thanks a lot for watching the very first episode of Quick Roll, and that is it for tonight. We will see you next time.